Hey, everyone. Have you ever felt that knot of fear in your stomach? That moment when you're judged unfairly, simply because of how you look? That deep ache of injustice? Or maybe you've carried a secret, a hidden strength that no one suspects? Well, today's story, it's exactly for you. It's a story about those hidden battles, those moments that make your blood run cold, and the unexpected triumphs that can rise from the ashes of prejudice. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you were underestimated? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. It's amazing to see how far our stories reach. And hey, if you're ready to be moved, to feel every twist and turn, give that like button a tap. It lets us know you're here for this journey. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Now imagine this, a courtroom, the very air thick with tension. A young black man stands accused, facing a police officer, a figure of authority, pointing a finger of blame. The accusation hangs heavy, a shadow of doubt cast over everything. But what if I told you, beneath that calm exterior, behind those intelligent eyes, lies a mind sharper than any blade, a legal brilliance that no one in that room could have possibly foreseen? Let's dive in to see what unfolds. The fluorescent lights of the courtroom hummed, a monotonous drone that did little to soothe the raw nerves stretched tight in the room. Jackson, a young man with a quiet dignity about him, stood beside his court-appointed lawyer, a woman who looked as overwhelmed as he felt. Across from them, Officer Kalen stood tall, his uniform crisp, his gaze unwavering as he recounted the events of the alleged crime. His voice, smooth and practiced, painted a picture of guilt, a picture that seemed to solidify with every word he spoke. Jackson listened, his heart a heavy weight in his chest. Each accusation felt like another stone added to a burden he didn't deserve. He glanced at his lawyer, Ms. Albright, her brow furrowed in concentration, but he could sense her unease. The evidence, circumstantial as it was, seemed stacked against him. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of his resolve. He yearned for someone to see the truth, the real story behind Officer Kalen's carefully constructed narrative. Officer Kalen finished his testimony with a confident air. "So, Your Honor," he concluded, his voice resonating through the silent courtroom, "the evidence clearly points to defendant Jackson Hayes as the perpetrator." A wave of despair washed over Jackson. It felt like the walls were closing in. Ms. Albright leaned towards him, her voice a low murmur. "Stay calm, Jackson. It's our turn now." As Ms. Albright began her cross-examination, her questions were polite, almost deferential. But Jackson could see the wheels turning in her mind, the subtle shift in her approach as she probed for inconsistencies in Officer Kalen's story. Yet, Kalen remained composed, his answers precise and seemingly airtight. Days turned into weeks, the trial dragging on, each day a fresh wave of anxiety for Jackson. He found solace only in the late hours, poring over law books in his small apartment, a habit he'd picked up long before this nightmare began. Law wasn't just an interest. It was a passion, a way to understand the intricate rules that govern society, rules that now seemed to be turning against him. One evening, hunched over a particularly complex case study, a flicker of insight sparked in Jackson's mind. Something Officer Kalen had said during his testimony, a seemingly insignificant detail, suddenly clicked into place. It was a subtle contradiction, a legal nuance that Ms. Albright hadn't picked up on. A surge of adrenaline coursed through him. Could this be it? Could this be the key to unlocking the truth? The next day in court, Jackson felt a nervous energy thrumming beneath his skin. Ms. Albright continued her defense, her voice steady, but Jackson knew he had to speak. He leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. Ms. Albright listened intently, her eyes widening slightly. A slow smile spread across her face. "Your Honor," Ms. Albright announced, her voice now carrying a newfound confidence. "With the court's permission, I'd like my client, Mr. Hayes, to ask a few clarifying questions to Officer Kalen." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. This was unexpected. The judge, a stern-faced man named Judge Thompson, raised an eyebrow but nodded his assent. Jackson stood up, his heart pounding, but his voice surprisingly steady. "Officer Kalen," he began, his gaze meeting the officer's directly, You stated that the incident occurred at approximately 10:15 p.m. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct, Kalen replied, a hint of surprise in his tone. And you testified that the lighting conditions were poor, making it difficult to clearly identify the individual, correct? Jackson continued, his voice gaining strength. That is also correct, Kalen affirmed, a flicker of unease now visible in his eyes. Jackson paused, letting his words hang in the air. Officer Kalen, he said, his voice now firm and clear, are you aware of the Municipal Ordinance, Section 4, Subsection B, which specifically states that any eyewitness testimony regarding identification made under lighting conditions below 5 lux is inadmissible in court due to high probability of misidentification? A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Officer Kalen's face paled visibly. Judge Thompson leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Ms. Albright looked at Jackson with undisguised admiration. Objection, Your Honor, the prosecuting attorney stammered, but the impact of Jackson's words had already landed. Judge Thompson, after a moment of stunned silence, addressed Officer Kalen. Officer, are you aware of this ordinance? Kalen hesitated, his composure finally cracking. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding Jackson's gaze. I might have overlooked that detail, Your Honor. Overlooked? Jackson thought, a wave of disbelief and a surge of vindication washing over him. This was an oversight. It was a deliberate attempt to manipulate the truth. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers. The carefully constructed case against Jackson was beginning to unravel, thread by thread. But Jackson wasn't finished. He had seen the fear in Ms. Albright's eyes, the way the system seemed poised to fail him. He knew he had to expose a deeper injustice at play. Officer Kalen, Jackson continued, his voice now laced with quiet intensity. You also mentioned a specific piece of evidence, a jacket allegedly found at the scene. Can you describe that jacket? Kalen, flustered, described a dark-colored hooded jacket. And you stated that this jacket belonged to me? Jackson pressed. Yes. It was found near the vicinity of the crime, and it matched the description given by another witness, Kalen asserted, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Jackson nodded slowly. Officer Kalen, I have never owned a dark-colored hooded jacket. What I do own, and what I was wearing on the night in question, is a light gray, unhooded sweater. A sweater that was clearly visible in the security footage from the convenience store I visited an hour before the alleged incident. Footage that your department inexplicably failed to review. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Ms. Albright placed a hand on Jackson's arm, a look of stunned admiration on her face. The prosecuting attorney looked like he might faint. Judge Thompson's voice boomed through the silence. Officer Kalen, is this true? Was there security footage that wasn't reviewed? Kalen's silence was his damning answer. The carefully constructed wall of accusations crumbled, revealing the shaky foundation of prejudice and negligence upon which it was built. The trial took a dramatic turn. The judge, visibly displeased, ordered an immediate review of the security footage. It confirmed Jackson's account, showing him wearing a light gray sweater nowhere near the scene of the crime at the time Officer Kalen claimed. The other witness's testimony, already weakened by the poor lighting conditions, now appeared even more unreliable. As the truth unfolded, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. The suspicion that had hung so heavily over Jackson began to dissipate, replaced by a palpable sense of injustice towards him and disbelief at Officer Kalen's actions. Jackson watched as the officer's face, once so confident, now reflected shame and fear. It wasn't just about mistaken identification. It felt like something more deliberate, fueled by assumptions and biases that had no place in the pursuit of justice. The cross-examination continued, now led by a determined Ms. Albright, armed with the undeniable truth. She meticulously dismantled Kalen's testimony, exposing inconsistencies and highlighting the lack of credible evidence. The weight on Jackson's shoulders began to lift. He looked at the jury, their faces no longer filled with suspicion but with a growing understanding and empathy. He had spoken his truth, and the truth, however long it took, was finally seeing the light. In his closing statement, Jackson, with Ms. Albright's guidance, spoke not of anger or bitterness, but the importance of fairness and the dangers of prejudice. He spoke of the fear of being judged not by your actions, but by the color of your skin, a fear that so many carry. His words, filled with raw emotion and quiet strength, resonated deeply with everyone in the courtroom. The jury deliberated for only a few hours. When they returned, the verdict was clear: not guilty. A wave of relief washed over Jackson, so powerful it almost buckled his knees. Tears welled up in his eyes as Miss Albright embraced him, a triumphant smile on her face. The courtroom erupted in a murmur of agreement and relief. But the story doesn't end there. The judge, visibly disturbed by the revelations, ordered an internal investigation into Officer Kalen's conduct. The findings were damning. Kalen was found to have a history of similar incidents, a pattern of implicit bias that had led to wrongful accusations. He was ultimately suspended and faced further disciplinary action. Jackson, though scarred by the experience, found a new sense of purpose. He decided to dedicate his life to fighting for justice, to becoming a voice for those who were unfairly accused and marginalized. He went back to his studies with a renewed vigor, his passion for law now fueled by his own painful experience. Years later, Jackson stood in a courtroom once again, but this time he was the one addressing the jury. He had become a brilliant defense attorney, known for his sharp intellect, his unwavering dedication to truth, and his profound empathy for his clients. He never forgot the fear he felt standing where they stood, the chilling realization of how easily the system could fail. And Officer Kalen? His career was ruined, his reputation shattered. He became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of prejudice and the importance of upholding justice for all. So, what do you think of this incredible turn of events? Were you expecting Jackson to have such a powerful secret weapon? Share your reactions in the comments below. And don't forget to let us know where you're watching from. It means the world to us. If this story moved you, if it made you think, please hit that like button. It helps us bring more stories like this to you. This story reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, and that true strength often lies hidden beneath the surface. It teaches us that we must always question our assumptions and fight against the biases that can blind us to truth. It's a powerful reminder that justice, while sometimes delayed, can prevail when the light of truth shines brightly. Thank you for listening. We hope this story stays with you long after the screen goes dark. Remember, every voice matters, and the pursuit of justice is a journey we must all undertake together.